Who couldn't be doing well on a day like today? Things are going great. Good morning, Tom. I'm going to skip him a little bit because I'm a little late today. So I'll just do a couple of them here. Good morning, John. Hope you're doing well. Hope tech is working today. The tech worked. I actually did I made the order and the list from the iPad. So I didn't even have to wait for that conversion. Slightly why I'm late, though. But we're okay. Morning, bud. Hope you're doing well. Cal, can't wait for your trip to America. I noticed you mentioning you'd be coming from Ethiopia to DC shortly, so bon voyage. B for victory. Hope you're doing well. Bomatan, good morning, Bitcoiners. Rain Tech is working in New York City. Well, that's good news. You need the rain. Robert, we got a weekend shift, night shift. Happy weekend night shift, Bitcoiners. There you go. I understand. Assalamu alaikum. Just realized we were having Biden versus Trump 2 with maybe a slice of true orange Trump with Vivek. I think everyone's seeing it now, right? Where did you hear that first? That he'd be the vice president? I think it's a done deal. I think Trump is starting to signal it. They're just a perfect team. There's no way he doesn't recognize that, right? So, and he needs a young guy. Hope Tim Cook doesn't make the space drop list. Now, you don't get dropped from space for building a shit product. Tim, if Tim takes X off the iPhone store, we gotta, if he affects Elon's business like that, Elon's got to introduce him to the rocket business. I think that's just what I'm saying, right? Rocket business. CK in the house. Yo. Awesome, man. Thanks for everyone's patience today. Tucker has Ottawa. Yeah. He does. Yes, Sean recommends Apple products bring out Nolan's Jungian shadow. They sure do. Jevy in Austin, Texas, where the sun is just starting to rise, but the Sunrise Tech in Austin, Texas is operational. Bitcoin here running without any trouble. So all that's left for us to do is have a coffee and talk about what's new. Boy, do we have some fun stuff today. Whoops. Really fun stuff, huh? Let's see what we got. All right. Start with our Moscow time, right? Let's start with Moscow time. Do I have the right order? Did it fuck my order up? No, it's good. All right. We're gonna get into this lightly because there's a lot of Moscow time today. There's a lot of fake news out there. All right. Well, how about this, right? You want to know my favorite form of science, especially in climate science? It's like it's always been my favorite subcategory of climate science. Washington Post reporting on it here. A new study, part of an emerging field of tree ring science. Tree ring science, guys. You got to get your tree ring science. Found the West's 2-decade drought is inextricably linked to rising temperatures. Inextricable, guys. It's inextricable. The tree rings, they cut a tree, right? They could tell the weather 150,000 years ago. But they could also tell you it's inextricably linked. More science here. This one made a lot of news yesterday. I had it in my list. I didn't do it, but I had to do it in the end just because it kept resonating today, right? From New York Post, trans man who had mastectomy discovered to be 5 months pregnant, making a rare seahorse dad. All right, there's another way to write this headline, which is woman who had her breasts removed had a baby after he became a man. There's another way to write it, okay? But apparently here you can be a seahorse. So the person is not just a trans man with a mastectomy. It's also a seahorse. A super science, guys. Super science. Rare, because it's true that not many people want to cut off their breasts and then get pregnant. That's true. It's true. It's not a popular thing out there. All right. It's not popular. Speaking of not popular, this book was not popular, but people are talking about it today. It's Politico, and this is their headline. Reviewers called Hunter Biden's memoir brave. They called it brave. It was brave. Prosecutors call it incriminating. Lessons learned from Hunter Biden. Careful what you put in your memoirs. If you want to go out and buy it, everyone, it's called Beautiful Things. Oh, isn't that sweet? Isn't that sweet? There's another part of it too. he was candid. The president's son was candid about his past in his book, but now federal prosecutors are using it against him. This one's pretty good too. This is the New Hampshire primary, right? The New Hampshire primary. So in the New Hampshire primary, according to Politico, New Hampshire results suggest Joe Biden is in much better shape, at least within his own party, than many assumed. Okay, so there's that. But then there's another one here. This is from Dean Phillips. There's a guy running against him. You've probably never heard of him, but there is someone running against Biden. His name is Dean Phillips. And here's what we find out. Source, Dean Phillips received almost twice as many votes as Biden did in the New Hampshire primary. The Democrat Party, in an effort not to embarrass the president, found 50,000 write-in votes for Biden to give him the win. This follows Dean's claim that the party was delusional right now. So who knows what's going on, right? Who knows? But don't worry about Hunter Biden's book or what's going on in New Hampshire. Rolling Stone magazine has the headline of the day. All right, you gotta know this one. All right, forget about beautiful things, cocaine in the White House. None of that matters, because what we found out yesterday is Trump's White House pharmacy handed out drugs like candy. Report, according to the Rolling Stone magazine. I remember a generation ago when they would have been like, wow, Trump's White House is so badass. They're taking drugs. Not anymore. They've been taking drugs over there in the White House last time. The New Republic says that the Republican, this is a headline they decided to publish in 2024, guys. All right. This is situational awareness. Ready? The Republican Party of John McCain, winner of New Hampshire in 2000 and 2008, and Mitt Romney, the victor in 2012, no longer exists. That's news, guys. The Republican Party of John McCain and Mitt Romney no longer exists. All right. Oh, this gets really good. Okay, so Joy Reid, right? Joy Reid. She's wearing a Trump wig these days, right? I don't know. I mean, we talk about psychology a lot here. All right, we do talk about psychology a lot, right? So we talk about projection and Jungian psychology, all that stuff, right? We could have a lot to say about Joy Reid, the MSNBC host, with her blonde comb over wig that she's using right now. But there it is. She's wearing a comb over wig. And she's out there in a 3-minute monologue arguing that Trump is Hitler reincarnated. One of her lines is, like Trump, Hitler was also viewed as a clown, a goon who kept in line, who could be kept in line. That's Joy Reid. Nice wig, Joy. She went on to say, it is fascinating to me to watch a political party make the decision to self-destruct on purpose. But she was referring to the GOP, right? So Joy Reid says of the GOP's continued backing of Donald Trump, even though criminal indictments and electoral losses in midterm elections are happening, right? So she's just what's funny about this is that some people, I think, might have believed the fake news that they shared. So they're sitting there doing like, oh, Hitler, how could people be into Hitler? Because now they can't explain what's happening. So either they believed all of it, they might have believed their lies, right? They might have hypnotized themselves into believing this stuff. I think a certain percentage of these low IQ journalists have done that. The midwits, I think some of them are not just lying. I think they believed their own lies and they're sitting there. What's going on? It gets good, right? It really gets good. This one's good from the Washington Post. What if January 6th happened again? Only much, much worse. In a new Sundance documentary, War Game, politicians and military leaders simulate another contested election in January 2025 and take it to the extreme. What extreme is that? The Wall Street Journal had this to say about Nikki Haley not running out. Might this be the extreme? We don't know. We don't know. Here's what they say. Strange things can happen with candidates who are this old and this disliked by a majority of the public. They're talking about Trump, obviously, right? So Nikki Haley stays in because you never know. Trump might die or someone might kill him. Oh, and of course, we did cover the excellent news yesterday. The happy news headline: the LA Times laid off 115 people, 20% of its news service. And Taylor Lorenz decided to do a bit of content on that, right? So this is what Taylor Lorenz had to say about the situation. I don't think people understand how bad the world would be without journalists. I don't want to live in a world where, okay, but you got to understand, she does this as a TikTok video, okay? So just before I continue, I don't want to live in a world where all of the news is delivered through 60-second videos with retention editing. The rise of citizen journalism on apps like TikTok and elsewhere has overwhelmingly been a positive thing, she says. But there's a ton of really talented journalists that are also just not great social media people. Some journalists do really deep investigations or local reporting or sit through hour-long city council meetings to hold some local politician to account. And that's really important work. Okay, guys, it's really important work. All the citizen journalists. Oh, she had one more really good one. I had one more from her. Only at a place like the Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal, do you have months to investigate a story, and you don't have to worry about views, okay? You can do these stories where there's a public interest. The Washington Post series on AR-15s last year is a great example, okay? Like that level of journalism that really affects legislation and can bring accountability, okay? You just gotta understand. I was gonna save this for later, okay, and I'm going to. I still have more Moscow time, so I'm just gonna go out of order for a second. But I actually went. Okay, we're gonna talk about Texas today, of course. Okay, but just hold everything that Taylor Lorenz said in your mind for a second. Okay, just remember. I'll repeat it just so you have it in your mind, right? The Washington Post, the New York Times, the Wall Street Journal have months to investigate a story, and you don't have to worry about views. Okay, so remember that. All this stuff about how important it is, right? I don't think people understand how bad the world would be without journalists, okay? So remember all that. Now, I actually went today. I went to CNN, Politico, MSNBC. I did the gamut, okay? I looked at all, I even went on their websites. You know how rare it is I go on the website now of these things in order to find my fake news? I usually don't have to. I can just find the tweets and that's enough, right? But I went on there. I went into the web, like I went on DuckDuckGo and I typed in www.cnn.com, www.msnbc.com, okay? I went to these sites. Do you know how many stories they had about Texas and various states announcing their rebellion from Joe Biden in DC? Do you know how many stories there were? None. There's none. You can go check. There's not a single story on the Washington Post, on CNN, on MSNBC, on Politico. It's not happening, okay? They're ignoring it. It's not happening. There is zero indication on any of these websites today on exactly the ones that Taylor Lorenz is telling you how bad the world would be. And they don't even mention that the largest physical state, the second largest in population, has announced a rebellion by the governor with several other states agreeing with them. Okay? It's not in the newspaper. It's not in there. It's not happening. It's just not happening. All right? Which is funny, right? I cannot be funny. What is Taylor Lorenz spending all of her time on, though? It's obviously COVID, right? Here's what she says today. The consequences of disregarding all COVID precautions are becoming clearer. As more people get repeated infections and long-term symptoms amid an alarming spike in heart problems among healthy young people. People are getting sick more often. Thank you, Taylor. You're doing a great job. There you go. So the only thing you saw today about whatever's going on with politics on CNN, their head story is Trump's voters get the attention. Biden's may decide the election. That's it. That's their headline. So there you go. Now, all of this in mind, right? There's two stories that will lead us off to where we're headed today. And these are the last two Moscow Times stories. All right. This is like, after all we've heard in Ireland, in England, in America, about our politics in Canada, right? The whole Anglo-Saxon world, right? Things are changing quick. But the British Army chief, after what's going on in Russia, has given us a warning. He says the British Army chief's call to mobilize the nation in the event of war should be listened to. It should be listened to. Okay. Now, this is also good. Schumer warns that if Ukraine will fall, okay, he's not talking about Texas, Schumer, today. He's just talking about Ukraine. Okay, Ukraine. Schumer warns if Ukraine will fall, if Senate doesn't pass new aid bill, Americans will feel the impact. Now, let me tell you something about what's going on. We're moving into our theme here, the Texas two-step. Texas two-step, of course, is a dance, and we're going to talk about how we dance from Texas into the Bitcoin era today. But let's go back to Ukraine for a second. Maria, because it's related, right? So Maria, I can't really pronounce her last name. I feel like it's a Romanian name or something like that. Matejšik, maybe something like that. Anyway, her name I listed in my tweet, so you'll see, you can link onto hers there. She just got back from Ukraine, and she's just sharing some observations. Some of them have gone a bit viral, and here's what she says. Everything we heard about what's happening in Ukraine is a lie. Just a second. The reality is darker, bleaker, and unequivocally hopeless. There is no such thing as Ukraine winning this war. By their estimates, they have lost over 1 million of their sons, fathers, and husbands. An entire generation is gone. Even in the Southwest, where the anti-Russian sentiment is long-standing, citizens are reluctant or straight up scared to publicly criticize Zelensky. They will all go to jail. In every village and town, the streets, shops, and restaurants are mostly absent of men. The few men who remain are terrified leaving their homes for fear of being kidnapped into conscription. Some have resorted to begging friends to break their legs to avoid service. Army search parties take place early in the morning when men leave their homes to go to work. They ambush and kidnap them off the streets, and within 3 to 4 hours, they get listed in the army and taken away straight to the front lines with minimal or no training at all. It is a death sentence. It's getting worse every day. Where I was staying, a dentist had just been taken by security forces on his way to work, leaving behind 2 small children. Every day, 3 to 5 dead bodies keep arriving from the front lines. Mothers and wives fight tooth and nail with their armed forces, beg and plead not to have their men taken away. They try bribing, which sometimes works, but most of the time they are met with physical violence and death threats. The territory celebrated as having been won back from Russia has been reduced to rubble and is uninhabitable. Regardless, there is no one left to live there, and displaced families will likely never return. They see the way the war has been reported at home and abroad. It's a joke and propaganda, they say. Look around. Is this winning? Worse, some have been hoaxed into believing that once Ukrainian forces are exhausted, American soldiers will come to replace them and win the war. Could you imagine? There are people just like the guy in England who think that we're going to show up for these losers. I mean, again, when I keep putting the frame that Bitcoiners are a little bit like the conquistadors in the Mexican situation 500 years ago, in the sense that they're a little more situationally aware. They've predicted most of this stuff coming. They've seen the decay within the nation state itself and are not coming to help. They're not going to get their best, right? Just like Trump's Mexican rapist speech said, they're not sending their best. Well, Bitcoiners won't send their best to America. Bitcoiners won't send their best to any of these countries. The best have already left, right? You got to even remember what America and Americans are in the first place. We've talked about it a few times this week. Americans are people who already left a place because it became a shithole. We'll do it again, right? There's like all of our ancestors have successfully left shitholes. Everyone in America knows how to leave a shithole, right? And we're not showing up for Ukraine. Are you kidding me? It's not happening. It's just not happening, right? So they could probably get some sludge people from America over there. They're not getting like the multi-generational family soldiers who used to live and breathe and would do anything. They would die for America and its democratic ideals. That's gone. We don't live in that world anymore. We don't have that kind of naive patriotism to be a hero to save the place we're in like we used to. right? Now, that doesn't mean there aren't heroes. There definitely are heroes. We're entering an era of heroes. It's just incentives again. It's what you're fighting for. What are you fighting for if you're fighting for Joe Biden and the U.S. federal government, right? You're fighting to perpetuate the bad guys winning. So Americans have clued into this for the most part, And that's why, obviously, we're never going to Ukraine. We're not going to fight in that war. But there are things Americans would fight for, and they probably won't even have to, because I've been describing World War III, at least the American version, as more psychological and economic versus actual hot war. And I think what we see in Texas right now is exactly that. So first of all, let's just go back to my legal analysis the other day, right? So when I said, when the Supreme Court did this thing, I said, wait a minute here. People are getting all excited. All the Supreme Court said was that the federal government had a right to remove barbed wire because the border is continuous and all of it American. So they did have the right to go and take it down. That's what the Supreme Court said. However, what I said at the time was the Supreme Court didn't say anything about Texas putting it back, right? That they can't prohibit Texas, and nor did they within that 5-4 decision with all the women on one side, nor did they make that declaration. They just said the federal government has a right to come in and take it down. Sure, fine, I get that, right? But they never said anything about Texas and its rights to enforce their own border as well. Now, they said the federal government can take it down, but again, that's not preventing this Texas government from putting it up. They're not the same thing, right? Now, what happened yesterday was the governor of Texas came out and announced one of the most amazing things I've ever heard in my life. That's how amazing and exciting this was. So he came out and wrote his letter basically to the Supreme Court and Joe Biden, and underlined the legal authority under which he's going to exercise sovereignty on the Texas border. And it's a pretty amazing stuff, right? So first of all, he says the federal government has broken the compact between the United States and the states. The executive branch of the United States has a constitutional duty to enforce federal laws protecting states, including immigration laws on the books right now. President Biden has refused to enforce those laws and has even violated them. The result is that he has smashed records for illegal immigration, despite having been put on notice in a series of letters, one of which I delivered to him by hand. President Biden has ignored Texas's demands that he perform his constitutional duties. President Biden has violated his oath to faithfully execute immigration laws enacted by Congress. President Biden has instructed his agencies to ignore federal statutes. By wasting taxpayer dollars to tear open Texas border security infrastructure, President Biden has enticed illegal immigrants away from 28 legal entry points. So I skipped some of those reasons, but I paraphrased them. Under President Biden's lawless border policies, more than 6 million illegal immigrants have come to the United States. James Madison, I'm skipping again, Alexander Hamilton, and the other visionaries who wrote the U.S. Constitution foresaw that states should not be left to the mercy of a lawless president who does nothing to stop external threats like cartels smuggling millions of illegal immigrants across the border. This is why the framers included both Article 4, which promises the federal government shall protect each state against invasion, and Article 110, Clause 3, which acknowledges the state's sovereign interest in protecting their borders. The failure of the Biden administration to fulfill the duties imposed by Article 4 has triggered Article 110, Clause 3, which reserves to this state the right of self-defense. For these reasons, I have already declared an invasion under Article 10, Clause 3, to invoke Texas's constitutional authority to defend and protect itself. The authority is the supreme law of the land and supersedes any federal statutes to the contrary. The Texas National Guard, the Texas Department of Public Safety, and the Texas personnel are acting on that authority, as well as state law, to secure our state border. The reason I read the whole thing, and the reason why I wanted to emphasize this last line, is because this is something that a lot of people never understood. The mirage of the federal government after World War II is presented as a major league, minor league situation where the federal government is the major leagues and the state governments are the minor leagues, that somehow the federal government has a superseding power over US states. That has never been the case. In our history, in the history of America, the states are sovereign entities with equal powers to the federal government, depending on where the separation of powers is. They have abdicated some of those powers to share with their other confederate states. And by confederate, I just mean all of the states that are within the federation. Those states then who give the federal government those powers in an agreed on way are a limited set of powers over which the federal government does have authority. But everything else is states' rights. Everything else is states' rights. And states in the powers that are enumerated to them are sovereign and supreme. It is not a minor league situation. It is not an A team and a B team. It's not a senior and a junior situation. It is equal and different. And that is one of the major things that's going to change. And one of the major things that Bitcoin is going to help change in the world. And I'll explain how. First of all, the nature of the United States and the country itself, being these states, has been forgotten by our success, our practice, and all of those things. Before, and I've mentioned this many times, linguistically, we can even understand this history. Before the Civil War, we would say the United States are. After the Civil War, you said the United States is. And that continued right up until the U.S. Civil War, the World War II. And in the World War II time, we started to see that the United States is quickly became the federal government is, or just the Fed is in short, right? Because, of course, the Federal Reserve, neither federal nor a reserve, became the actual keystone to this whole system, right? The monopoly over minting money became one of the ways that the country fell into the centralizing trap. They all had to use the same money. And by using the same money, just like Europe thought that's how you can build a country, right? With the European Union, you can take these separate countries and make the United States of Europe as long as we have money. Now that money's gone. That thing's not going to make it much longer. It's failing as fast as you can imagine. Lagarde knows it. It's drastically failing, right? It's not just a little bit. It's not involved in any of the important conversations around energy markets. There is no energy marked in euro, and that is not going to change because they don't produce any, right? Even their big energy producers in Europe are not part of the union. That's the reason why they're not part of it. Norway is not part of the union. You know, one of the funniest things that it does, if you ever look at the euro coins, have a look again, because Norway's not in it. All you get is Sweden and Finland. And if you remove Norway from the map, which they do on the coins, it just looks like a cock and balls. Look at it. Go look at the euro coins with Norway not in the map. It just becomes the dong of Sweden and the balls of Finland. This is the funniest cock and balls money you'll ever see, right? So the cock and balls money of the euro that has no energy market for it it's done. It's done. It's just Lagarde nagging you. The whole point of that money is Lagarde nagging you. There's nothing else there, right? And she's going to keep trying to nag you, but she can't handle it, right? So what we're going to see, this is Bowtied Ranger. You follow a SCOTUS decision when your enemy, so about Texas, you follow a SCOTUS decision, a Supreme Court of the United States of America, when your enemy follows SCOTUS decisions, and you don't follow when your enemy doesn't. It's common sense. Good move by Governor Abbott here. So this is the interesting part, right? Matt Walsh says it. He goes, Abbott has Biden over a barrel here. What is Biden going to do? Send the military to forcibly open the border in an election year? I'm sure he'd like to, and would if he could get away with it, but it would turn the vast majority of the country against him, those who aren't already against him anyway. Multiple states now have come up and supported Texas in this effort. Oklahoma, Utah, Georgia. I've seen a list, but they keep going. There's more and more and more, right? So, and Wokeness says the standoff with the Texas National Guard might deal the final and fatal blow to the Biden White House. It's a lose-lose. Either they send troops down to fight and physically remove the barriers and wires, or they let Texas continue to provide the public with visuals of what actual border security and enforcement looks like. And indeed, that's where I think we're at. We saw Ted Cruz yesterday, who didn't just look like a politician pissed about stuff, right? He was on another level of anger. And what he said is, and he's talking now about the border bill that the Republicans are signing. As bad as we think this bill is, I promise you it's worse. This bill is a kamikaze plane in a box canyon with no exits headed for a train wreck. Represents Senate GOP leadership waging war on House GOP leadership. So again, we're seeing the political order in America fracture in a way that can't be ignored and can't be put back together, right? We see the states assuming their sovereignty in ways that you also can't go back on. The federal government can ignore this. They can do what we see, and I think that's their only play. I think the only play here is to do exactly what we saw CNN, MSNBC, The Washington Post, for those who weren't here at the very beginning of Moscow time, I mentioned that I went on all of these news websites today just to find one story about how they're trying to frame and spin Texas. They can't. There's no spin available. There is no wiggle room here. They cannot even talk about it. They have to ignore it, right? So they've got to ignore it. There's no other way. They've got to ignore it. And now we see that they're actually able to engage in war, right? That's what that Article 1, Section 10, Clause 3 says. It says that no state shall, without the consent of Congress, lay any duty of tonnage, keep troops or ships of war in time of peace, enter into any agreement or compact with another state or with a foreign power, or engage in war unless actually invaded. That's why Abbott declaring a state of invasion already, it's been months since he did that, right? It wasn't yesterday that he declared Texas as being invaded. He set this up legally for a long time now. So what we're going to see now, and again, you see it, other states may now send troops or this is Wall Street Silver, equipment to aid in halting the border invasion. Which states will send troops and equipment to defend the border? So I believe Texas is even going to get reinforcements from Oklahoma, a neighboring state, for example. Oklahoma is having to deal with this stuff. You won't see it from New Mexico because it's a Democrat state. Wall Street Silver again saying this is an interesting confrontation. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has a ton of public support from both Republicans and Democrats to openly defy Joe Biden and the U.S. Supreme Court. If Joe Biden does nothing, it looks like the weak president that he is. If Joe Biden sends in the FBI in massive numbers of federal agents, he looks like he is trying to open the borders and assist an illegal invasion during an election year. There is no winning move here for Joe Biden. So they're going to keep putting razor wire down and they're going to keep going. Meanwhile, you've got over in Europe, right, where the cock and ball money is, with no energy market that's dying fast while Lagarde is in her quiet time. You get the French now doing the manure thing more, right? They're bringing the manure trucks in. They dumped a bunch of tripe, so the innards of animals that stink, right? They dumped a bunch of that. And by the way, that's interesting because normally you actually have something in France that we don't even understand in America. We've never even heard of it. There's tripe butchers, right? So you can go and get all these weird parts of an animal that only certain butchers even know how to deal with. And you can go to these places. I've been. It's a pretty amazing experience just to see all these like organ meats and weird things that they have. But that's like a type of butcher in France, right? There's multiple of these types of butchers around. It's not like what we see in America when we just get our ribeyes. They've got those too, but they got this other one. So they brought this like slurry of manure and tripe and all this kind of stuff and dumped it there. We see it's still going on in Germany, right? They're not stopping. So when you think about all of these states now trying to exercise sovereignty against the centralizing, supposedly supranational forces, right? The federal body of the United States, the quasi-federal thing in Europe. You're going to see from here these states assuming more and more sovereignty over more and more of their affairs. They're kind of waking up and using atrophied muscles that they've forgotten they had. Now, and Governor Abbott has a pretty amazing opportunity here. And Bowtied Ranger says again, if Trump's able to pull off victory in 2024, it'll be at least partially thanks to Governor Abbott, forcing an enduring national conversation about illegal immigration through one, busing all the illegals, one of the funniest moves we've ever seen, right? The Martha's Vineyard and New York and Chicago and all these places. And two, defying the federal government's order to stand down at the southern border. So indeed, he has a very huge moment here. And I think, Texas is rich. They don't have a deficit. They've got all kinds of money. They have the energy system of all global energy systems. We've seen everyone in the past few days, Peter Zehan, this moron, talking about the grid stability in Texas. But Bitcoiners know, and the Texas Bitcoiners are understanding that their grid is one of the most amazing and is only going to get better because of Bitcoin. ERCOT, the large Texas utility, one of the largest energy utilities in the world, maybe the largest, I don't know, get it, right? They're integrating Bitcoin at a rate you can't imagine already into their system. But here's where it gets interesting. any type of conflict here going forward with the Texans involves Texas assuming more sovereignty, right? The answer is going to be, I don't think they're going to try to get along with Joe Biden going forward or anyone asking stuff for them from DC. I think they're going to be de-risking from Washington, DC more and more. And if you go back to their finances, you go back to that aspect, there was an obscure effort. Some Texans know about it. An obscure effort for Texas to re-exercise their vestigial power over minting money. All right. So states can mint gold-backed, not fractional reserve money, and Texas is allowed. Texas has done it before, and they've been talking about doing this again. Now, think of the situation we find ourselves in. We have a U.S. state declaring a type of sovereignty from our overarching federal institution. And it's not just any state. It's the state that has an actual Bitcoin embassy relationship with El Salvador already, right? El Salvador keeps a Bitcoin office in Texas. The Texas grid folks get Bitcoin. They now understand their power and potential from where they are geographically with their energy matrix. And they have also seen the net negative that Washington, D.C. presents this rich state. And part of that is the debt, right? This is not Texas's debt. This is the federal government's debt. It's not Texas's. They don't have that debt, right? You could say they assume it for them and all these, financial engineering things. Oh, it's our debt collectively. Texas does not. Texas never signed over any form of liability to shit countries, to shit foreign nations, to shit federal programs. They didn't do that, right? So the debt exists to the U.S. corporation of the federal government that sits in D.C. It's not Texas's. Texas now has a way out, a very simple way out, which is to mint their own money and start de-risking from the federal balance sheet, from the federal institutions, including the Federal Reserve. So I believe that this conflict that you see at the border is going to metastasize into Texas literally minting Bitcoin-backed money. And it's going to happen soon. They're going to balance their own internal economy using their energy, and they're going to back up their energy markets with Bitcoin. And this might happen in 2024. This might happen this year now because of how awesome the Bidens are. As I said a million times, the Bidens were the absolute accelerationist pick for Bitcoiners. There was no other president who could have got Bitcoin this far from 2020 until now. Trump would have been too successful. And I wanted him to win in 2020. I say all the time, I voted for Biden 5 times in 2020. And I was proud to, because I knew the election was going to be a scam and it was going to be rigged. And I didn't really, but I always tell people to trigger them that I voted 5 times for Biden, right? There's no better trigger. Don't argue about elections with libtards, by the way, and whether the 2020 election was stolen, right? You just say, I voted for him for 5 times. I voted a bunch of times for Joe, right? And people will be like, I don't understand. And then their brain is broken, right? And then you win. So it's fine. So, because Trump was so good. Now, obviously, I didn't want any of the suffering people have had to go through with this Biden government. I didn't want any J6 people in jail. I wanted, truthfully, if you'd have asked me at the beginning before COVID, I just wanted Trump to win again and get into Bitcoin eventually. I was fine with that, right? I was patient. I was fine with that, right? A little more altering of reality with Trump there, a little more Trump derangement syndrome, a little more mental illness to try to provoke people to healing, right? I thought all that was going to be good. So that I was for Trump the first time because of the potential he had to completely break the game. And I stayed with him right until all that stuff. And I was sad to see the election stolen from him, even though I voted for Biden 5 times. I voted for Biden 5 times because the only way through was through. You had to break the machine. You couldn't really go a little longer. Trump would have just extended the old system through success, through competence. And that's not great, right? And that's not great if you know you need to change things. If you know the system is terminally broken, then you got to do something different. And Biden was so incompetent that it could only help. I didn't know he'd be this amazing for Bitcoin. But imagine we have states now seceding We have states in open rebellion against the federal entity in the blob that sits in DC, which is everything we need. They have to ignore secession, right? They've got to do what they didn't. And that's the reason why I brought the Ukraine story there. Just think about how low IQ, super unaware Americans are about what's actually happening in Ukraine, right? They don't understand. They've never been told. People, American people who watch mainstream news have been so abused and misled and have been the victims of information warfare. And remember, World War III is a psychological war. It's psychological and it's economic. And the psychological aspects of the war have turned most Democrats into brain damaged, retarded people. And because they're retarded and brain damaged and don't really know what's happening in the world at all, they are prone to just being misled and prone to new fears being introduced into their, cocktail of decision making. And with what we saw from that person describing what Ukraine is really like versus now what Americans are going to be unaware of what's going on in Texas. They don't even know. There isn't even a single story on any of these sites about what's going on there, right? And now I recognize all of this stuff as being exactly what we saw in Canada. Right now with Canada, I go back to Canada all the time, right? I keep a place in Canada. I went to law school in Canada. I got all kinds of fancy, rich, smart, successful friends in Canada, right? And they didn't really know about the trucker thing, right? I don't really know. And then I would tell them, right? I still tell them, hey, this just happened the other day. I went for a friend owns a hotel in Quebec City, had everyone there for his birthday. We hired a caterer and this and that. So he says at the end, can everyone email me money in the Canadian network? And I said, I don't have a Canadian bank account, right? And he's like, well, why do you not have a Canadian bank? I was like, I'm not allowed. What do you mean? Why don't I have a Canadian bank account? Like, I'm banned. What do you mean? And why? I got kicked out, bro. And he's like, well, how did that happen? And I said, well, you remember the truckers, right? Well, that was the end of it, right? They shut it all down and I don't have an account anymore. I can go start another one up. It's true. I could go in and say, hey, can you take me back? I want to be a client in your bank. Here's my ID. Give me a card. Give me a ATM card. I'm going to go use that. Give me a loan, guys. I want a line of credit, right? I could do all that, but I'm not going to. I don't need a fucking Canadian bank. I have one US bank left. I got shut down from another fucking bank yesterday, by the way, fuckers. I'm running a little, with the book, I have the token, the art stuff, right? So someone sent me money to help build the company and all that stuff. And fucking bank froze it. It's a lot of money. It's more than a Bitcoin in there, right? I'm going to turn it into Bitcoin, but, for IRA and whatever the Roth, the person who gave me the money put it in that like investment thing that doesn't hurt that's a tax write-off thing, so I have to process it this way. I can't process the investment as Bitcoin. I have to go through the slave system and then turn it into Bitcoin and put it on the balance sheet. But they fucking shut me down. They just shut it down. I can see the money in the account. I have to send it back to him now because the bank just told me they're closed. This is an American bank. They just told me, no, we don't deal with crypto. And fine, I get it, right? They showed me a new one I can deal with. I got another one. I'm going to be fine. So it's not a problem. But I can't go around all day starting up fucking bank accounts because they get shut down. Like I go, it's just too much Bitcoin stuff out there. It's just too clear to people that I work with Bitcoin. I'm over 10 years in Bitcoin now. So at a certain point, and I've been on all the fake news shows, they just have to Google me. That's my friends, when it was going on, the thing in Canada with the truckers, right? When it was going on, they would say, when are you coming back? Because at the time I didn't know. I had to stop plans to ever come home, really, because you didn't know how long the martial law was lasting for. And I had friends, I was on the phone with a friend. He's like, when are you coming back? And I'm like, what are you talking about? He's like, are you gonna come home in the spring? I said, well, if the martial law goes away. He goes, martial law? What are you talking about? I said, the truckers. Right? This is when it was still going on. And this is a smart guy, very smart guy. What? He says, and I say, well, I can't like fly home. He goes, but you're a lawyer. He says to me, you can like, can't you like defend yourself? And I said, but do you understand what martial law is? There is no law. There's no more defending myself. A simple Google search will show. And I wouldn't be able to pass a Google search at the border during martial law. There's no way. There's no, I would have been arrested instantly. Instantly. You think they're going to let a Bitcoiner under martial law just fly in the country and be like, hey, I'm driving? And they ban, we tried to send, Bitcoin Magazine tried to send journalists to cover the truckers. They were denied at the border. Bitcoiners, fuck that. They're not doing that. Right? That was banned. Like, we had them at the border trying to drive into the United States, into Canada. Not allowed, right? Banned. So there was no getting out of that. There was no anything. And now, right, we find out Trudeau and the thing with the courts the other day that I mentioned, that there was never a reason to be in martial law. They faked the evidence that it was an emergency, right? You had Chrystia Freeland, right? She's the one that was out there. She's the one they dragged into WEF last week after Javier Milei torched the place. And they brought her fat ass, I don't want to fat shame, pardon me. They brought her over there to like try and do damage control because she's a good friend of Klaus. And if you guys don't know about this woman, her grandfather was an actual, like, full-on happy to do it Nazi, right? And she was one of the ones, like, absolutely so ecstatic when they brought that Nazi Canadian in and they were clapping for him. Remember that? She was like, yeah. She's all fucked up. I think she's on some kind of fucked up drugs too, because she's always twitching, right? So she looks like she's got some drug issues. I don't know. I'm not going to diagnose her from abroad. She's always been a little twitchy, but she's way twitchier now. So they found out that she pressured the head of the, whatever you call it, CIA in Canada, it's called CSIS. She pressured them to say that there were terrorist elements within the group. And then that's why they had the authority to go and do what they did. So we know now that's a big scam, right? Michael Schellenberger talking about it. Canada's Prime Minister froze the bank accounts of 2022 Freedom Convoy protesters, claiming it was an emergency, but it wasn't. And now public has proof that his government has faked intelligence to illegally frame protesting truckers as violent extremists. And so yesterday you had Tucker Carlson, Danielle Smith. Danielle Smith is the governor, what we call premier, right? We call it a premier of the state of Alberta, which is the most sort of Texan. Well, Quebec is actually the most Texan state in Canada, to be totally honest, right? As a Quebecer, I can say that. The only thing that's different is the liberal versus conservative thing, but otherwise they're exactly the same. Do you know that the best rodeo you find in Canada is in Quebec? We have like Quebecers at my country fair do the cowboy hats, the cowboy boots, the line dancing. They're hillbilly Quebecers. In the Quebec mind, they are the Wild West of France. They're west of France, right? So to them, they're like the rustic, hillbilly version of French people. And they love it. They embrace it. And I love it too. I love Quebec for that, right? It's the snowmobile. When I used to go to law school in Quebec City, people would drive their snowmobiles to the bar with the whole like NASCAR type of style, with the, jackets, with the advertising all over it. I mean, 100% Texans. A little dumber in some ways, a little smarter in other ways. But again, when you have energy like Texas and Quebec has, it doesn't matter what you do. You can be absolutely retarded and you'll be fine because you're rich. You have energy. You're rich. You're fine. They'll always be fine. And so, and they got all the land, and they got, Quebec has just everything, right? It's just one of the most blessed physical areas in the world. And they never got all confused either, like the rest of Canada. Like, this is the land of the Acapulco people and all that stuff, right? The what do they call, where are it's the people in my area. What were they called? Abenaki, the Abenaki Algonquins, right? So now, all these virtue signalers in Canada will always tell you what native land they're on, right? They never get it right, which is funny. They never get it right because they can't actually follow the amount of genocide that went on just before Canada was founded, because the white devils came and gave different tribes weapons and they all were killing each other. So sometimes when they're in Toronto and they're like, we're on the land or the whatever, they're wrong. That was the one that just genocided the one before, right? There's a whole bunch of funny ones like that in Canada. So you had the state of Alberta, you had the governor there, and the governor, by the way, if you didn't know this, the governor understands Bitcoin. I know a few people that work directly for her. I knew the previous governor, and he had Bitcoiners working for him. The new one totally gets it. And I believe if they keep fucking with her in the same way that they fucked with Texas, if they keep fucking with her with trying to get her oil to market, and I've said before, if Alberta had a single maritime port, Canada would already be fallen. It would already be broken up as a country. It wouldn't have made it. It would not have made it. The only reason it still exists is because Alberta needs the cooperation of its neighbors to get its product to market. And they haven't cooperated in 20 years. Their time is up. Alberta is going to use whatever new thing Texas creates in the American deal to be a state. However loose it ends up becoming because of Texas's newfound sovereignty and a diminished corporate federal body in DC, will create an opening, I believe, for a light touch deal for places like Alberta to easily slot into a type of new American federalism, a lighter touch, a lighter bound federalism, a more decentralized federalism. And I believe that Alberta, with how bad they've been treated by their east-west horizontal neighbors, will prefer the southern relationship. And if that happens, in the same way that the corporate body that is Washington, D.C. and the federal government, Canada has the same thing. Ottawa is a corporate body. The federal government is this entity. I don't believe, I'm not sure about this, but I believe if the country breaks, the territories are no man's land because they're not states. They're products and property of the federal government in Canada. So that's the Yukon territory, that's Northwest Territories, and Nunavut. Now, Nunavut is more self-governed, so I believe they just become a state. If the federal government can't keep their end of the deal, they're just a state. Yukon might go the same way, I'm not sure. But my belief is that if there is no more Canada, right, there's no more Canada, then Yukon is nobody's. And I believe if the Yukon territory and the Northwest territories are no man's land. Now, I could be wrong about this, but I don't think I am. Then what happens is America gets its land bridge to Alaska through Canada. And America actually, it's not happening tomorrow, but as America moves on the Bitcoin standard, as countries decentralize, as states awaken, as these decentralizing forces incur, there might still be something like Canada, but I think you can even go like, I think in the future, you'll be able to be both. You'll be able to be both. You'll be able to be a little bit an American state, a little bit a Canadian state, in the same way that Canada is part of the Commonwealth, right? You can be part of different bodies and entities. I think it will make sense, right? And so and so he was there, right? Tucker was there talking about the medical assisted and dying. He filled up a hockey arena. That's how many people wanted to see him. He didn't just go speak at a little event. He filled up a hockey arena. You had Conrad Black with him. Conrad Black being someone I've known most of my life. I've mentioned him many times on this show. He was one of the people that I went to the same law school as him. He paid for a lot of cool stuff at our law school, our law library, and things like that. He was in jail in the U.S. He went to the Supreme Court and won. So pretty neat guy. Did a little bit of work on that case years ago. He's the fellow who wrote the book on Nixon that I always talk about, and that's the book on Nixon that helped me understand just how much fake news was involved in Watergate. So there's a huge appetite for this stuff in Canada too, and Alberta is one of the states that can actually make this happen. So the only way, and look, this is physics at this point. These states are going to wake up. Texas is not going to be messed with when it comes to Joe Biden, and there are other states that are going to follow Texas's lead here. And it looks to me like the only response they have, it could be the killing and the death and more brainwashing, but we see things like, again, MSNBC had 0 on Texas. Their whole front page was on Fani Willis. All right. What the new Fani Willis? Remember Fani Willis? This is the frumpy lady who's trying to prosecute Trump in Georgia, but was banging her one of the prosecutors on his case, who she was paying, who was then taking her in a money laundering scheme on like cruises, right? This is they have 4 stories on it on MSNBC at the top of the page, right? So what the new Fani Willis allegations could really mean for Trump's Georgia case. Georgia court to decide on unsealing Nathan Wade's divorce papers. And so Fanny's also had to get a restraining order against the guy's wife because Fanny says she's threatening her. We got to get all these people. Jerry Springer's dead, but we got to get them all on a show one day. Georgia, they will be. You know, she's headed to pornography or something. This Fani Willis after this, she's headed to like something absurd, right? She has to. There's no way she's not going to go on being a lawyer after this, right? She's headed to something, you know, something D-list celebrity gross, right? I can see it. You can see it in her eyes. So, a weird prediction, but I think that's headed there. Trump co-defendant hopes to generate scandal to escape Georgia prosecution. So now it's Trump trying to get a scandal with Fani Willis to avoid. Oh gosh. So that's what you got, right? That's what you got. And then you get things like, you know, Chris Hayes, another one of the MSNBC liars, saying paying attention to Trump sucks, but we got to do it anyway. We have to do it a lot more now. Your life's going to suck a lot worse, Chris. You're not going to be able to talk about Texas and the war going on. So there you go, guys. We're on a inextricable track now to watch. And now get ready. This is a 2024 story that we're all going to love. Texas is going to embrace Bitcoin as part of this Texas 2-step deal because they're going to want to de-risk even more from the federal government. And they've started on a path that I think leads to them minting some form of volcano bondy proximate thing. Now, there's no volcanoes in Texas, but you know what I mean. It's going to be something like the volcano bond, but it will be in Texas. It will be for their own balance sheet, for their own treasury management, and they're going to de-risk from the swamp entity that is in DC. Even if Trump wins, even if this is physics and can't be stopped. It has begun and can't be unwound. America is going to come apart. And again, my prediction about the simple language, right? United States are pre-Civil War. United States is post-Civil War. Fed is post-World War II. And we're going back to the beginning. The United States are. And we'll win. We'll win. We'll win. All right, let me get Rumble up. Let's see what they're saying on Rumble. I hope it worked. I didn't check. I hate when it doesn't work. It worked. Good. If you're ever out there on Rumble and it doesn't work, and I start the show and I go on, and it's not happening, come into YouTube and tell me so I don't ever waste my life. Okay, what do we got here? Oh, a lot of comments here. She's got crazy eyes. I'm guessing Rupar, you're talking about what's her slut? Taylor Lorenz. Yeah. No, she's super. Yeah, she's crazy. She's nuts. She's a live action bobblehead. Yes, we call her Twitchy here too. Oh, are we talking about oh, maybe I missed that. We're talking about Freeland. All these comments have been since then. Oh, we're not even talking about Taylor Ennis. We're talking about Freeland. Yeah, she's got crazy eyes. I've met her a bunch. I remember when she won a by-election to come, and I was still in Parliament at the time. And she was as disgusting to look at then as she is now. Freeland has serial killer eyes. One eye is always googly. My wife, who likes crime mystery shows, pointed this out. Googly eye theory. No, the crazy eyes are really obvious, right? I think we're seeing it more and more, these crazy eyes. French rednecks love it. Yeah, Rokar, the French are like, the Quebecers are way more like Texans than anyone in Canada understands or in the United States understands. If you want real good rodeo, for real, the best place is Quebec. It's not as good as you do. And I mean, we don't have the same population, right? We're the North version. There's only 8 million people in all of Quebec. So the population is not so high that We've only got one major city, right? Montreal. You've got 2, 3 in Texas. So it's still smaller in total. So you won't find the craziness of that stuff. But like, just look at this. Where I went to school in Quebec City, it's one of the only schools in Canada that has real college football culture. I mean, we had 20 something thousand people a game, military plane flyovers, all that stuff, right? Like tailgating, full on hillbilly Quebec. It's great. It's great. Quebec Nordiques were one of my top 3 teams on NHL hockey for Sega Genesis. Yeah, they had the Igloo. Yeah, it was great. I still have one. Sick jerseys. They sure are. Old Saucy says that's BS. Not genocide. It was war. Sorry, Old Saucy. I don't know what you're talking about. We are already trying to separate from Canada. Yeah. Alberta hates Quebec. Yeah, that's okay. They do rob you blind, Old Saucy. Yeah. Of course they rob you blind. Quebec's whole scheme is to fool dumb English speakers, right? That's the whole game, right? You should respect the game. Quebec and Alberta are the bad boys of federalism. Now, the Albertans have suffered as well from brainwashing as far as what Quebecers think about them, right? If you as an Albertan go to Quebec, you'll be treated very, very well. I mean, I meet all the time. I meet these people from out west. Oh, I had a flat tire in Quebec. I was scared for my life, right? Because they hear these stories about French people hating them and their French are mean. And none of that's true. Like, you're not going to have any trouble in Quebec. If you have a flat tire, like, it's the most likely place to help you, right? They're very friendly and all that. So I get what you're saying, Old Saucy. And I wish you luck in separating from Canada. I'm a separatist, all right? I am a 100% Quebec separatist, 100%. I don't wish. I think all of the country would be better off. Really, I think Alberta, who I love, and I'm only a Quebec separatist if I get this one deal. I get all the passports of the new countries, right? I think I should get them all. I think we should every Canadian should get when the country breaks. I don't think there'll be passports necessarily, but I want rights to all of it, of course. But I don't really consider myself a local in British Columbia or Alberta. I'm not. Right? I'm a English Quebecer. I couldn't be fucked one bit about Ontario or most of the rest of the country. Right? I don't care. Right? I want them to do better than they're doing, and they're doing terribly as this East-West shithole. They'll be much better off on their own. Everyone will be better. We're terrible to each other in Canada. The thing where Quebec laughs at the dumb deal the Newfies took on energy, I mean, it's atrocious. It's bad neighbors. We are not fit to be. We don't deserve to be in a country together, right? Now, deserve is a difficult word to put there, but we have no business. It doesn't make any sense, right? We don't need to be in this ridiculous thing. And whatever we have left, I don't want borders put up. I don't want to have to check between different places of Canada if I would ever drive across it, even though I wouldn't, because that would be ridiculous. I took the train across once. That was really fun. I took the train to the Olympic Games in Vancouver, which was a great experience. I've been to Alberta a bunch. Love Banff. Love Jasper. Right, amazing, right? Yeah, exactly. Bud says Alberta has to become more like Quebec. Yeah, the only problem with Alberta is they're a little too dumb. They should have been extorting. So if you guys don't know how this works, how the scam that Quebec got on Alberta works, it's hilarious. I'll explain it to you. So we have to do this like equalization payment thing between different states, right? In Canada, there's think of it as a medium level of GDP per capita, right? Think of it that way. Take GDP, make it per capita, and if a state doesn't produce that much economic activity, then you move it from one state to the other using the federal government, and they call it transfer payments, right? So they transfer money from rich parts of the country to others, okay? So, but here's the thing. Quebec, You're going to love this. Quebec, using Trudeau's dad, got the GDP of all of our hydroelectricity to not count for the GDP of Quebec. It doesn't count. But all of Alberta's oil counts. Okay, so every bit of energy they produce makes them owe the rest of the country more money. We can produce infinity energy in Quebec, and it doesn't count. It doesn't count. So I agree. Look, I look at my city. We have a beautiful new bridge, trains galore, the best subway in Canada. We absolutely robbed Canada and fleeced them to get all that. We fleeced them. It was a fleece. What am I supposed to say? I would rather, if I was in charge of the deal, I would never have done that. But that's the world we live in, and I don't give a fuck. Alberta needs to do the same. Like, we're not here to be like, oh, that's not fair. You know what fairness is? You know what fairness is? It's a subject. It's a reference for dumb people and children. That's what children and stupid people use as a reference. You know what you do if you don't know what to say because you're too stupid about a situation? You say, that's not fair. That's not fair. No one cares about fairness. Children, it's just a children's idea. For real people, right? I say, well, that sucks for Alberta. You know what you have to do? Not cry about it and do something better. Because are we not adults? Are we not Bitcoin men, women? Do we not believe in personal responsibility? And personal responsibility extends to the stupid state you live in. It does. Unfortunately, it does. And Alberta not being able to understand how much they're getting fleeced because it's not fair. Apply for MAID. Okay, that's the other option. You just go get the Canadian healthcare, just like Tucker was talking about. If you're killing 50,000 of your citizens and the government is doing it through the MAID program, and a lot of them are not actually terminally ill, it's probably because a lot of them are pissed off that the world's not fair. It's not fair. I'm going to kill myself. So that's what you got to do, right? There's no fairness coming. It's not coming. Show me some fairness. Take some fairness off the wall and hand it to me. Why don't you put some fairness in the Bitcoin transaction for me? Why don't you put a little side of, why don't you use some op return and put some fairness on ordinals? I'll love it. I'll buy those rare sats with some fairness on it. All right. There's no such thing. It's a made up idea, made up to give stupid people something to talk about. If we didn't have the fairness reference, they would literally have no opinions. That's it. They would have no opinions. There would be no way for them to talk about the world. So excuse the reference of fairness as just what dumb people use to talk about the world around them. It's not a real thing, right? It's not like, as when I see these people Bitcoin for fairness. No, not what happened. It's not what's happening, right? Rupar, not genocide, it was war. Yeah. We already trying to separate. They do definitely rob you blind, old saucy. That's right. I said it. Haha. Well, but that's true. Yeah, there's frogs and Jewish people in Montreal. It's true. It's true. It's true. It's true. But that's what I love about it. That's what I love about Montreal. So to be fair, as much of a Quebec separatist as I am, I'm a bigger Montreal separatist. That's my number one. I want Montreal to be Hong Kong, Singapore. It's an island. I want a city-state, man. I want to go straight Monaco, right? Straight Monaco. Quebec, Montreal would be the greatest city in the world if we just told them all to fuck off. It would be the greatest. There would be nothing like it. It would be the greatest money laundering capital, the greatest at everything. It would be paradise. If we can figure it out, I'd vote all day for that. I'd vote like I did for Biden 5 times. Okay, just kidding, by the way. I know you are old saucy. Rokar, Alberta is where the resources are. We know you're a comedian extraordinaire, sauce. Well, the resources are everywhere, guys. There's no lack of resources in Canada. That's all it is. To make America as fertile as it is, the glaciers scraped the topsoil right down to the Canadian Shield. So all you have in the Canadian Shield for thousands of miles is just exposed bedrock that's filled with gold veins and all kinds of amazing stuff. You know, even the tar sands. You know how we found the tar sands, right? The fucking environment. They're fracking and we've got oil in the rivers now. Do you know how we found them? well, the whatever, I can't remember the name, Athabasca, maybe the river that goes through Alberta, literally would cut through sand and bring oil with it, and we could see the streaks of rainbow and black in the riverbed because it's just in the ground. You don't need an oil spill in Alberta to get toxic water. It just has to go through the ground. And so the it's everywhere. I mean, it's nonstop. We couldn't even find it all. There's just too much, right? My prediction, and in my book, Satoshi Wedding Murders, you see that we actually terraform the North with these huge diamond igloos where we geothermal cut into the ground and use magma flows. And we basically colonize all of the North. In the same way, we only Texas only becomes Texas when we invent air conditioning, right? You can't, Spindletop, Texas, when they first did the gush of oil, no one really wanted to live there. You needed roughnecks, right? It was really just the roughnecks being the oil people, right? You needed roughnecks to go down there because you couldn't bring women to live down there, right? Go read the James A. Michener. He does these like historical novels. Hawaii, The Source is his original one, which is like the original story of Israel and the tells and all that stuff. But he does these things in different areas around the world and sort of tells a story that gives you a sense of the history. So it's not a history lesson, but you can't help but learn the history. He's got an amazing one on Texas, just called Texas. And my dad was big into these books years ago. So I have a bit of an understanding. I've read a few of them. And the Texas one does talk about this time when no one wanted to live there because it's such a harsh climate. The times I've been to Texas, one of the not last year, the year before, it was 43 Celsius before the humidity in the day. So that's 105, maybe something like that. Like you can't live there, right? It's unless you have technology. So it's the same now in the north of Quebec, but there is no such technology. We will develop in Quebec. We're going to develop these amazing ways to live in inhospitable northern climates. And it's going to be in our lifetime. We're going to learn how to terraform the moon and Mars by terraforming the Canadian Arctic first. That's where we're going to learn about terraformation the most. That's where we're going to learn about climate engineering and geographical engineering or geography engineering way more. The Citadel Tech is going to the north, basically, right? Citadel Tech is going to be in the north. So there you go. And no one's going to be killing themselves. There'll be no more made. Alberta, so resources everywhere, right? I was born in Calgary, so I'd have to go with the Flames. Old yeah. Well, I like the Flames too. We've all kind of turned our backs in the NHL. Yeah, no kidding. Guys, I'm done with hockey too. I mean, I'll never not love the Montreal Canadiens, right? It's just impossible to ignore some of the stuff, but I haven't watched a hockey game since I had kids, really. So it's been years. I watched one Stanley Cup game. I watched the Game 7 where they beat the Leafs and they came back, and that would have been in the same Stanley Cup year. But yeah, I've always been a total Montreal Canadiens fan. It was I moved around a lot, so it was my way of being in contact with home because I would listen to the radio. I always followed them on the radio, but I would listen to the sports radio in Montreal for years because I just wanted to know I just wanted to hear the weather and what's happening. It was like my way of being at home. But the sports journalists are the dumbest journalists in the world, especially in Canada. So they made it so I couldn't listen. I had to quit the radio. When was it that I quit the radio? COVID. I think COVID made me not even be able to listen to the Canadian sports radio. Maybe before, though. I don't remember. I was a North Stars fan as a kid. Can't get down with the Wild. Yeah, same. I like the North Stars. Pro sports are not a part of my life. They got too political. Yeah, me too. Everyone, Rupar, everyone, I'm in the same exact boat. I can't see the drama anymore. The stakes are too low. With a real war going on, I hope one day I can find it worth my time again. But every time I watch it now, I'm like, what a child thing to do, right? It's like what Alex Jones said the other day. Like all these Buffalo people that shoveled and I've been to that stadium a bunch. I never had to shovel, but I used to go to football games in Buffalo all the time, and I can see what Alex Jones said. All these men will watch their country fall, but they're just obsessed with football, right? It's a problem. It's a problem. You can feel the energy shift, Sluggo123. Yeah. Rokar, no more Wayne Gretzky, no more Michael Jordan, just a bunch of dick tucking corporate shills. Yeah, that's true. Yeah, it really is. Kids are into martial arts now, so that's good. And I'm glad the UFC lets the players call out the perverts. It's refreshing. Yeah, my kids do karate. They had karate last night. They do karate every week. Yeah, it's good. I like it. It's a shame. It is a shame. Everything has a beginning and an end. They want to push unnatural things, but nature has a way. Yep. Rumble for the win. One Slayer. One Slayer. I'm not gonna. You're probably not a real human. Just fuck off. I'm not. No one's touching any of your thing. This link to whatever appeal for assistance. I can't help you. It's not gonna happen. Sorry. I don't really know. I see this link and it just seems like spam. I'm not. This is not the place for appeals for assistance. I don't think. Notion. I don't know what's going on. I only watch hockey with the TV muted. Yeah. Trailer Park Boys are really funny. Oh, you're about 15 minutes. Oh, cool. I like it there. Yeah. When I was growing up, so the Trailer Park Boys, when I was a student, was very popular, and they used to go around in Canada in character. So you would go to the bar and they would show up as themselves, like as the characters they play, and they would just party with you. It was hilarious. So you could go and like, they would just be at the bar. It was one of the funniest things you've ever seen. Really funny. If someone wants to mine Bitcoin in Quebec, how can you do that? How is it priced? Bob, yeah, one of the biggest mines in the world is in Quebec. The Bitfarms guys are there, the 50 megawatts, I think. You need a purchase agreement from Quebec, and they don't give them out easily. What happened was they gave this note that they were open for business in the 2017-2018 run. A whole bunch of people applied. A huge mine applied, which was the Bitfarms one, the 50 megawatt one. 50 megawatts, to give you context, that's like a pretty good sized city's energy needs, right? Not a major city, but like a city that's big enough to have a strip mall. So like a 20,000 person city or something. So it takes that much energy. It's a big one. So they sort of pump the brakes a bit on giving more of those licenses. Now the problem in Canada with the mining is the fucking federal government with the taxes. It's not Quebec. Quebec didn't jump in 2 feet first like it ought to have. Now Quebec is even. So remember I said if you get energy right, you can be stupid, and that's sort of one thing Quebec and Texas have in common. Quebec can be dumber because their energy is so easy. It's just gravity, right? It's just water. So they're not like, their back isn't up against the wall here. When they understand, and I have planted the seed with the separatists in Quebec, that if they understand what Bitcoin can do, they can use it to leverage their exit from Canada. So again, why I said that Canada would fall if Alberta had a port, because Quebec still gets a good deal. That's why they're in. They've got ports and everything, but they get bought off, right? When they're not bought off, they'll go on their own instantly. The only thing that keeps them there is the money from Alberta. That's it. That's all it is, right? We'd be gone all along. We don't need the rest of Canada. We don't need it. Have you seen Quebec on a map? All right, we're doing fine. Make football trans, yeah. I feel like the football thing in America is less than it ever was anyway. Women's college volleyball is the only It's a good one. But they got dudes in it now too. I saw a dude the other day just fucking tearing these girls apart. My favorite sports are the trans sports. Did you hear US boxing? They're going to let the trans do it. I can't wait. I like watching winners, and I like watching knockouts. And I like if I watch boxing, really what I watch is like a compilation of Mike Tyson knockouts. Can you imagine what we're going to get when one of these trans boxers beats the shit out of a woman? It's going to be amazing. I'm going to watch it big time, right? Who's not going to want to watch that? Bang, like that girl, I think she was a Quebec girl, the one who had her face when she did MMA against the trans dude that became a woman and got a skull fracture. I want more of that. That's what I want. More of. More. Let's do more. Right? A city has a, yeah, I knew there was some below that are towns. Yeah. So, well, there you go. I think I thought that was the cutoff, a city of 50K. Yeah. So it's a town. But I was going to say 50K, but I thought I was wrong because I would say 50K population and 50 megawatt. And I thought that didn't make sense. I'm not sure if that's true. So I scaled down the city a bit. Maybe it's true. All right. Long show today, but that's all I got, everyone. That's all I got. I shall see you all tomorrow. I hope you have a great day. Make sure I got all the live chats here. Oh yeah, I saw Mr. Leahy and Randy at a bar in Strathmore. It was pretty fun. Yeah, yeah. Holy crap, Leahy was my favorite. Yeah, he died. Yeah, yeah. One Slayer. Okay, One Slayer. This is a real thing. Okay. Okay, but I don't know what it is you're looking for, Slayer. I don't know if this is the place to do it. Yeah, yeah. Sorry, One Slayer. I appreciate you coming, man. I thought you were just a bot for a second. I'm a fan of anyone who comes and is honestly here to hang out, but I don't know if this is the right environment for that. I don't know how we can help. But anyway, because no one's clicking on links, guys. It's just not going to happen. I thought the Leahy actor was sober for decades. Yeah, I think he was. I don't know how he died, but yeah, anyway, I used to see them all the time. All right, guys. Truthfully, this is it. Peace. Have a great day. I shall see you all